During the Dust Bowl, static electricity in the air could knock a grown man down. The air was so charged that even the simple act of walking across a room could send sparks flying from your fingertips. People would sometimes see blue arcs of electricity leap between metal objects or even between themselves and their animals. It was a strange, almost otherworldly danger, one of many that people faced during this time. Imagine a handshake sparking blue lightning between you and a friend. The air itself felt alive, crackling with energy, as if the very atmosphere was rebelling against the people who lived beneath it. For many, these shocks were a daily reminder of how much their world had changed. In the 1930s, the southern plains became a battleground between people and the sky itself. Every day, families woke up not knowing if they'd see the sun or another wall of dust rolling in from the horizon. The Dust Bowl wasn't just bad weather, it was a decade-long disaster that transformed the American heartland. It changed the way people lived, worked, and even thought about the land they depended on. Years of overfarming had stripped away the native grasses that anchored the soil. Farmers, desperate for bigger harvests, had unknowingly set the stage for disaster by leaving the earth exposed and vulnerable. When drought hit, there was nothing left to hold the earth in place. The soil, once rich and dark, turned to powder and blew away with the wind. Winds swept up the loose topsoil, creating dust storms that blotted out the sun and traveled thousands of miles. These black blizzards could turn day into night, leaving everything coated in a thick layer of dust. Dust fell on cities like Chicago and New York, even reaching ships in the Atlantic. No one was truly safe from the reach of these storms, no matter how far they lived from the plains. For those in the storm's path, life became a daily struggle against a relentless, suffocating haze. People stuffed wet rags in windows and doors, but the dust still found its way inside, coating every surface and filling every breath. Homes, farms, and futures were buried beneath layers of dust. Entire communities were uprooted, and families were forced to leave behind everything they knew. The Dust Bowl is a stark reminder of what happens when we push the land beyond its limits. It shows us the consequences of ignoring nature's warning signs and the importance of sustainable farming. It's a story of hardship, resilience, and the urgent need to respect the balance between people and nature. Against all odds, many found ways to endure, rebuild, and learn from the devastation. The lessons from this era are more relevant than ever as we face new environmental challenges. The Dust Bowl's legacy urges us to remember the past, so we can protect our future. The Dust Bowl began with hope and ambition, as thousands of settlers looked to the Great Plains for a new beginning. The government encouraged settlers to farm the Great Plains, promising fertile land and prosperity. Brochures and posters painted a picture of endless opportunity, drawing families from across the country. World War I drove wheat prices sky high, fueling a frenzy to plow up every acre. Farmers rushed to meet demand, believing the boom would last forever. Native prairie grasses, which had protected the soil for millennia, were replaced by shallow-rooted wheat. The deep roots of the original grasses had held the earth together, shielding it from wind and drought. New tractors made it easy to tear through the land at unprecedented speed. Mechanization allowed even small farmers to break vast stretches of prairie in a single season. For a while, abundant rain made it seem like a winning formula. Fields flourished, and harvests were bountiful, reinforcing the belief that the land could provide endlessly. But the farming methods were unsuited to the dry, windy plains. The region's harsh climate was unforgiving, and the techniques brought from wetter regions failed to protect the soil. Deep plowing left the soil loose and vulnerable, and farmers rarely rotated crops or let fields recover. Year after year, the same land was worked without rest, stripping it of nutrients and resilience. The Great Depression hit, wheat prices collapsed, and farmers plowed even more land to survive. Desperation drove them to push the soil harder, hoping for just one good harvest. The more they tried to save their farms, the more they damaged the land. Each effort to recover only deepened the crisis as the soil grew weaker and more exposed. The topsoil, once the foundation of their livelihood, became powder in the wind. With nothing to anchor it, the earth was swept away by relentless gusts. Economic desperation and flawed farming practices set the stage for disaster. Families watched their dreams vanish as the land itself seemed to turn against them. The land was primed for catastrophe, its surface dry and exposed, waiting for the inevitable. All it needed was a spark, and soon the winds would bring the storm that changed everything. The spark was drought. In 1930, the rain stopped. The drought deepened, becoming the worst in U.S. history. The sun baked the exposed soil until it cracked and crumbled. Streams dried up, wells failed, and crops withered in the fields. The once green plains turned brown and barren. With no rain and no plants, the soil was left defenseless. The wind, ever present on the plains, now had nothing to stop it. Farmers prayed for rain, but the sky offered only more sun and wind. The drought exposed the fatal flaws in how the land had been farmed. Overplowing and relentless wind erosion created the perfect conditions for disaster. The stage was set for the dust storms that would define a generation. Nature was about to unleash its full fury. The Dust Bowl had truly begun. The wind picked up the loose topsoil and unleashed black blizzards, towering walls of dust that swallowed the land, blotting out the sun and turning the sky an eerie, suffocating brown. Day turned to night in minutes, as storms miles wide swept across the plains, leaving entire towns in darkness and confusion. Dust storms stripped paint from cars, buried homes and coated everything in a gritty film. Even the smallest cracks in doors and windows offered no protection. Families hung wet sheets over windows hoping to filter out the dust, but the fine particles always found a way in, settling on every surface and in every breath. On April 14, 1935, Black Sunday, a massive storm struck without warning, plunging the region into darkness. People recalled the sky turning pitch black in the middle of the afternoon. People ran for shelter, describing it as the end of the world. The air was thick, making it hard to breathe, and panic swept through communities. The term Dust Bowl was born that day, capturing the scale and devastation of the disaster in a single phrase. These storms weren't rare, they became a constant threat, with some areas hit by over 100 dust storms a year. The relentless cycle left little time for recovery. The psychological toll was immense: endless cleaning, suffocating air, and a sense of hopelessness. Many felt trapped, unable to escape the dust or the despair it brought. Dust pneumonia became common, especially among children and the elderly. Hospitals filled with patients struggling to breathe, and many lives were lost to the choking storms. The storms destroyed not just land, but health and spirit. Communities were left broken, and once thriving towns faded into silence. The Dust Bowl was a relentless assault on every aspect of life, testing the endurance and willpower of everyone who lived through it. Survival became a daily battle. Families rationed food and water, clinging to hope as their world was buried beneath layers of dust. The land, once a source of hope, had turned deadly. Crops failed, livestock perished, and the future seemed uncertain. The dust was everywhere, inescapable and unforgiving. It became a symbol of hardship, resilience, and the struggle to survive against impossible odds. For those who stayed, every day was a fight against the dust. Mornings began with sweeping piles of dirt from the floor, only for more to arrive by nightfall. Meals were gritty, plates set upside down to keep them clean until the last second. Farming was nearly impossible. Crops died, equipment was buried, and livestock suffocated. The land that once promised prosperity now brought only loss. Dust pneumonia and other respiratory illnesses spread, especially among children. Schools closed, and when open, children wore makeshift masks to class. The emotional toll was just as severe. Anxiety, depression, and a sense of helplessness gripped families. The sky, once a symbol of hope, now brought only fear. Communities struggled to hold together as the crisis deepened. The Dust Bowl tested the limits of endurance and spirit. It was more than an environmental disaster. It was a human one. Survival meant adapting to a world turned upside down. As the storms raged and hope faded, hundreds of thousands abandoned their homes. With farms buried and savings gone, families loaded their belongings into battered cars and headed west. California beckoned as a promised land, but the journey was long and harsh. Along Route 66, migrants faced breakdowns, hunger, and suspicion from towns along the way. Labeled Okies, they were met with hostility and seen as outsiders competing for scarce jobs. In California, reality fell short of the dream. Work was grueling, pay was low, and families lived in makeshift camps. John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath captured their struggle, bringing national attention to their plight. The Exodus revealed deep divides in American society. These migrants lost homes, farms, and dignity, facing poverty and injustice in their search for survival. The Dust Bowl migration was one of the largest in U.S. history. It was a story of displacement, hardship, and resilience. To understand the Dust Bowl, listen to those who lived it. Anne Marie Lowe, a North Dakota survivor, wrote of endless dust and her mother's tears as she swept it away. Lawrence Svobida, a Kansas farmer, chronicled his struggle to save his land only to watch his crops buried by storms. Dorothea Lange's photographs, especially Migrant Mother, captured the dignity and suffering of families on the move. These stories reveal a common thread: perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds. Families leaned on each other, shared what little they had, and found moments of joy amid hardship. Barn dances, songs, and community gatherings offered brief respite from despair. The Dust Bowl was not just about dust and loss, it was about human connection and hope. Even in the darkest times, people found ways to endure. Their resilience is a testament to the human spirit. The lessons of their survival echo through history. The Dust Bowl forced America to rethink its relationship with the land. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal brought sweeping changes. The Soil Conservation Service, led by Hugh Hammond Bennett, taught farmers new methods to protect the soil. Contour plowing, crop rotation, and letting fields rest became standard practice. The government launched the Great Plains Shelter Belt, planting millions of trees as windbreaks. Severely damaged land was bought and restored to native grasslands. These efforts weren't just about changing the land, they changed minds. Demonstration projects showed farmers the value of conservation. The Dust Bowl marked the beginning of a new era in American agriculture. Working with nature, not against it, became the guiding principle. The land slowly healed, and the storms grew less frequent. The crisis sparked a revolution in how we care for the earth. Its lessons shaped the future of farming. The Dust Bowl ended when rains returned and new farming methods took root. But its scars remain, a warning etched into the land and memory. The disaster showed the dangers of ignoring nature's limits. Sustainable agriculture became essential, with practices like contour plowing and windbreaks still vital today. The Dust Bowl taught us that soil is precious and fragile. Today we face new threats: climate change, drought, and water scarcity. The lessons of the 1930s are more urgent than ever. We must respect the land and act as stewards for future generations. The Dust Bowl is not just history, it's a call to action. By learning from the past, we can build a more resilient future.